Admiral James Chen's boots echo against the polished observation deck as he stares through the massive viewport. Before him, the skeletal frame of humanity's answer to the stars takes shape, the HSS Nemesis. Massive robotic arms dance around the hull, welding reinforced plates and installing systems that no alien engineer would consider sensible. Quite a sight, isn't she? Chief Engineer Sofia Martinez joins him, her dark eyes reflecting the flashes of welding torches. Just installed the third backup for the tertiary life support system. The Arkelian representative nearly had a seizure when I showed him the schematics. Chen smiles, but his eyes remain fixed on the distant Earth, its blue surface marred by the still visible scar where Chicago once stood. 3 crawl dreadnoughts had appeared with no warning 6 months ago. Conventional wisdom said one world couldn't stand against such firepower. Conventional wisdom hadn't accounted for human stubbornness. The council representatives are here again, Martinez says, checking her tablet. 4th safety inspection this month. You mean 4th espionage attempt, Chen replies, straightening his uniform. Let's give them something to think about. The delegation waits in the docking bay. 6 representatives from the Galactic Council's most powerful civilizations. Ambassador Exceltor of the Talasian Concordat steps forward, skin shifting from diplomatic blue to anxious purple as Chen approaches. Admiral, we appreciate your accommodation of our concerns. Zeltor begins, multifaceted eyes darting between Chen and the armed human guards. The Council merely wishes to ensure compliance with interstellar safety protocols. Of course, Ambassador. Chen offers his most diplomatic smile. Though I should warn you, today we're testing the manual point defense targeting systems. The radiation shielding isn't fully installed yet. The ambassador's skin shifts from purple to a sickly gray. Manual targeting. Without AI assistance. In radiation zones, Martinez suppresses a smirk. Standard human operating procedure, Ambassador. Our crews train to maintain combat effectiveness, even in environments that would require your species to evacuate. As they tour the half-constructed vessel, the alien delegation grows increasingly disturbed. A Medusan scientist pauses at a weapons console, appendages twitching nervously. These kinetic weapon systems, she notes, they're based on gunpowder principles. Projectile weapons. Rail guns actually, Lieutenant Ramirez explains proudly. Hypersonic tungsten rods. No fancy energy signatures for enemy sensors to detect, and no way to shield effectively. Just good old-fashioned kinetic impact. Primitive, the Medusan whispers. Effective, Ramirez corrects. Energy shields evolved to counter energy weapons. Nothing stops 30 kilograms of tungsten moving at relativistic speeds. Further along, the Jovian representative pauses at a sealed bulkhead marked with radiation warnings in a dozen languages. Your reactor core has manual controls. The Jovian's translator struggles to convey his disbelief. Triple redundant manual overrides, Martinez confirms. Humans can operate in radiation environments that would kill most council species. If the automated systems fail, we go in and handle it ourselves. At what cost? The Jovian asks. Martinez's expression hardens, whatever cost necessary. By the time they reach the bridge, Exceltor can no longer hide his concern. Admiral, I must be frank. This vessel violates no specific council regulations, yet it disturbs us. You've designed it not merely to survive combat, but to continue fighting when half destroyed. Your backup systems have backup systems. Your crew trains to operate in conditions that would kill them within hours. Chen activates a holographic display showing the Battle of Chicago. Thousands dead in minutes when the Crawl struck without warning. Ambassador, humanity learned something when the Crawl attacked Earth, he says quietly. The galaxy doesn't care about elegance or efficiency. It cares about survival. The Nemesis isn't just a warship. It's a promise that humanity will never again be caught unprepared. As the delegation departs, a junior Talasian analyst lingers behind. Your species evolved on a death world, didn't it? She asks Chen. No other explanation makes sense. Chen considers Earth, its hurricanes, earthquakes, predators, diseases, and humanity's own bloody history. We just call it home. That evening, Celtor's encrypted report reaches the Council. The humans aren't building a vessel. They're building a nightmare, one that fights hardest when it's dying. Stars help whatever makes them truly angry. Red emergency lights bathe the half-constructed corridors of the Nemesis as Sofia Martinez crawls through a maintenance shaft barely wide enough for her shoulders. Sweat trickles down her face, partly from exertion, partly from the increased heat as she approaches the damaged reactor section. Status report. She barks into her communicator, wincing as sparks shower from a ruptured conduit overhead. Security Chief Ramirez's voice crackles through static. 6 confirmed Vector infiltrators. They've taken engineering. Conventional weapons aren't penetrating their personal shields. Torres and Chen are pinned down on Deck 4. Martinez pauses at a junction, her face illuminated by the soft blue glow of emergency schematics on her tablet. The Nemesis wasn't ready for this. 3 months from completion, half its systems untested. Perfect timing for sabotage. What about Admiral Chen? She asks, forcing open a maintenance hatch. Command Center, coordinating with orbital defense. No reinforcements for at least 30 minutes. Martinez's lips curl into a smile that would disturb most Council species. She reaches a panel marked Emergency Only in faded red lettering and yanks it open. Inside sits an artifact that would make any Council military observer recoil in horror. A 12-gauge shotgun, technology unchanged for centuries. Tell the Admiral I'm implementing Contingency Zulu, she says, checking the weapon with practiced hands. And remind the Council observers that they were warned about inadequate safety protocols. 12 decks below, the Vector saboteurs move with precision through engineering. Their environment suits, cutting-edge technology from the far reaches of Council space, make them nearly invisible to standard sensors. Their leader, Specialist Vexna, plants the 5th quantum disruptor beside a primary power coupling. Primitive design, she hisses through her translator to her companions. Redundant systems, manual overrides everywhere. Inefficient and inelegant, her second-in-command nods, placing another explosive. Their dependence on physical controls rather than neural interfaces is their weakness. Once we destroy the central computer core, they'll be blind. A sudden clang from an overhead vent freezes them in place. The Vector raise their weapons, sleek energy pistols that can shift between cutting and stunning modes. The overhead panel crashes to the floor, and what follows defies all Vector tactical training. Martinez drops into the room, shotgun roaring with thunderous force. The first blast doesn't penetrate the Vector shields, but the kinetic impact throws the alien across the room. The second shot cracks a shield emitter. The third, aimed at the floor, sends fragments of deck plating into unprotected joints in the alien's environment suit. Impossible, Vexna hisses, firing back with her energy weapon. No species relies on projectile weapons anymore. The inefficiency isn't about efficiency. Martinez grunts, rolling behind a power conduit as energy beams sear the air where she stood. She taps her communicator. Now. Throughout engineering, panels burst open as Martinez's team emerges from maintenance crawl spaces, access tunnels, and air ducts. Each carries weapons that make the Vector recoil in disbelief. Axes designed for emergency bulkhead breaching, wrenches, industrial cutting tools, and more shotguns. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons. Martinez shouts above the chaos. Physical impact still works. Hit them hard. What follows isn't the surgical precision of Council military doctrine, but the brutal chaos of human desperation. A technician takes an energy blast to the shoulder but continues fighting, swinging a wrench that catches a Vector saboteur in the breathing apparatus. Marines trained in vacuum combat tackle infiltrators, using their own momentum to slam them into hard surfaces, disrupting shield generators through sheer kinetic force. Vexna, shields failing, watches in horror as humans fight through injuries that her species' neural nets would classify as incapacitating. A Marine with severe burns across his face disarms her lieutenant. An engineer with a clearly broken arm still manages to disable a quantum disruptor seconds before detonation. Fall back, she orders, but it's too late. The humans have them surrounded, using the ship's architecture, filled with intentional choke points and defensive positions, against them. As Martinez personally slaps restraints on Vexna, the Vector commander stares in disbelief. You were waiting in the maintenance tubes. You knew we would come. Martinez's smile is all teeth. Rule 1 of human engineering. Assume everything will be attacked, sabotage, or fail catastrophically. Then build accordingly. Later, in the makeshift break, Admiral Chen interrogates the captured Vector leader. Council observers watch from behind a reinforced viewport, their expressions unreadable. Who sent you? Chen asks calmly. Vexna's compound eyes fix on the Admiral. Does it matter? We failed. I want to send them a proper thank you note, Chen replies. You've just helped us identify 17 vulnerabilities in our defense systems. The Vector's appendages twitch in confusion. You are grateful. The Nemesis is designed to learn from failure, Chen explains. Better to fail now than in actual combat. As Chen leaves, Vexna transmits one final encrypted message to her handlers. The humans were prepared for us. Their ship contains hidden passages, manual weapons, redundant systems beyond rational design parameters. Most disturbing of all, they expected to be attacked during construction and planned accordingly. What kind of species plans for failure as meticulously as success? HFY glides through the corridors of the nearly completed Nemesis, 4 sensor appendages twitching nervously as they absorb data. As the Galactic Council's senior scientific attaché, they've inspected hundreds of warships across 17 spacefaring civilizations. None had disturbed them like this human vessel. This section houses our secondary command center, Admiral Chen explains, palm pressing against a scanner that reads not just his fingerprints, but his subsurface capillary pattern and DNA markers. The heavy blast doors slide open with a hiss of hydraulics, deliberately analog in a digital age. Tertiary command is 3 decks down. Chen continues casually, and quaternary control is distributed throughout the habitation sections. Sailor stops abruptly, mandibles clicking in what the translation matrix identifies as confusion. 4 command centers. That's highly inefficient. Chen's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Efficiency isn't our primary concern. The command center itself violates every council design principle. Mixed analog and digital interfaces, physical switches alongside holographic displays, 3 separate computer cores running different operating systems, designed to reach consensus rather than operate in perfect synchronization. Your systems are deliberately incompatible, HFY observes, data crystals recording everything. Why introduce such complexity? Lieutenant Ramirez, who has joined the tour, answers before Chen can. Because consistent systems share consistent vulnerabilities. If one AI core is compromised, the others recognize the pattern deviation and isolate it. Different thinking prevents uniform failure. Sailor's analytical mind races to process this concept, designing for conflict within one's own systems. No council race would consider such an approach. Harmony and synchronization were the foundations of advanced technology. You intentionally build disagreement into your command structure. HFY asks. Chen nods. We call it cognitive diversity. Our tactical officers are trained to argue with each other. Consensus without debate leads to blind spots. As the tour continues, HFY's data crystals fill with disturbing revelations. Radiation hardening that suggests humans expect to fight inside stellar coronas. Manually operated weapon systems that could function after catastrophic computer failure. Atmospheric systems designed to operate even when half the ship is exposed to vacuum. In the ship's armory, HFY pauses before a display case containing antique weapons, a naval cutlass, an officer's revolver, a combat knife. Ceremonial artifacts from your history. The quartermaster, a scared woman named Yamamoto, laughs. Functional backups. Every crew member is trained in their use. When everything else fails, steel still cuts. Most troubling of all, Hezilur discovers design elements spanning humanity's entire military history. Damage control protocols mimicking ancient seafaring vessels, crew rotation schedules resembling submarine operations, tactical systems incorporating aerial combat doctrines. The Nemesis isn't merely a spaceship. It's an evolutionary document of human warfare. You've built a historical archive. Hezilur observes as they enter the final section of the tour, the ship's massive engineering bay. Chen's response sends a chill through Hezilur's exoskeleton. No, we've built a testament to what humanity has always known. Survival isn't about perfection. It's about adapting to failure. Chief Engineer Martinez joins them, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. The Council inspection team seemed particularly interested in our reactor shielding, she notes. I think they were hoping to find safety violations. And did they? Hezilur asks. Martinez exchanges a knowing glance with Chen. They found exactly what we wanted them to see. The implication hangs in the recycled air. The humans are showing their visitors only what they wish to reveal. How much remains hidden? In engineering's central control room, a holographic display shows the ship's power distribution, a redundant network so complex it resembles a neural system more than a traditional grid. This architecture, Hezilur notes, appears designed to reroute power even if 70% of conduits are severed. 82.6%, Martinez corrects proudly. We can run critical systems with less than a fifth of our power infrastructure intact. Hezilur's analysis subroutines struggle to process the implications. You designed this vessel assuming it would be catastrophically damaged. We designed it knowing that in war, damage is inevitable. Chen says quietly. The difference between victory and defeat often isn't who gets hardest, but who can take the most punishment and still complete the mission. As the tour concludes, Hezilur accompanies Chen to his ready room, a Spartan space with few personal effects beyond a shelf of physical books and a viewport facing Earth. Admiral, I must be direct, Hezilur says, dispensing with diplomatic protocols. The Nemesis violates no specific council regulations, yet it fundamentally contradicts our understanding of advanced warfare. You've built a vessel that prioritizes survival through damage rather than damage prevention. Chen activates a terminal, displaying classified footage from the Kral attack on Earth. Cities burning. Civilian casualties. First responders rushing into radiation zones to extract survivors. When the Kral attacked, they expected us to surrender after the first bombardment. Chen says, they didn't understand that humans have millennia of experience absorbing punishment and continuing to fight. The Nemesis isn't just a battleship. It's a message to the galaxy. Humanity won't break when hit. We adapt, we endure, and we hit back. That evening, as Hezilur's shuttle returns to the Council diplomatic vessel, they find themselves struggling with an emotion their species rarely experiences, existential dread. Their final report contains just one recommendation. The human vessel Nemesis should be classified as a strategic-level threat equivalent to a dreadnought-class capital ship, despite its technical classification as a heavy cruiser. Its danger lies not in its offensive capabilities, but in its capacity to continue fighting long after any rational species would consider it destroyed. Tactical stations report. Admiral Chen's voice cuts through the controlled chaos of the Nemesis's command center. The ship vibrates subtly beneath their feet, not from structural deficiency, but from the sheer power coursing through its systems during its shakedown cruise. Lieutenant Kamala Ramirez's fingers dance across her tactical interface. All weapons systems online, sir. Point defense grid at 98% efficiency. Targeting algorithms running parallel simulations. The bridge crew moves with practiced precision, despite this being their first real deployment. Their training, hundreds of simulated catastrophic failures, emergency scenarios, and no-win situations, has prepared them for far worse than a routine patrol of the Sol Proxima route. The Council observers stationed on the bridge watch with barely concealed unease. Their representative, a Medusan tactical officer named Shirak, studies Ramirez's station with particular interest. The Medusans, renowned for their strategic brilliance, had specifically requested access to human tactical systems. Your targeting protocols are unusual, Shirak notes, compound eyes blinking in sequence. You maintain active targeting on multiple vectors simultaneously, even where no threats exist. Ramirez nods without taking her eyes off her station. Standard human procedure. We don't just track known threats. We track potential threat emergence points and maintain firing solutions for rapid response. Inefficient, Shirak murmurs. Processing power would be better allocated to precision targeting of confirmed hostiles. Before Ramirez can respond, the communications officer interrupts. Admiral, emergency transmission from Arcturus Research Station. They're under attack by Krull raiders. 4 warships reported. Civilian casualties confirmed. The command center falls silent. 4 Krull warships would overwhelm any single Council vessel. The Nemesis, still untested in actual combat, would be expected to call for reinforcements. Chen's expression doesn't change. Helm, plot intercept course. Maximum speed. Tactical, prepare all weapons systems. Communications, notify Earth Command of our response, but make clear we are not requesting assistance. The Council observers exchange alarmed glances. Shirak steps forward. Admiral, Council protocol for encountering superior forces dictates. We're not following Council protocol. Chen interrupts. This is a human vessel. The Nemesis transitions to FTL with a shudder, faster than safety parameters would typically allow. In engineering, Martinez personally overrides the limiters, pushing the new engines beyond their tested capacity. 26 minutes later, they arrive at the Arcturus system. The tactical display shows 4 Krull warships in diamond formation around the research station. Their precision energy weapons systematically disable the station's outer defensive grid. Dropping out of FTL directly between the Krull formation, the helm officer announces, Shirak's exoskeleton vibrates in alarm. That position violates all tactical doctrine. The Medusan protests. You'll be surrounded on all sides. Chen's smile is predatory. Exactly. Lieutenant Ramirez, implement Chaos Protocol Alpha. With pleasure, sir. Ramirez's fingers fly across her console. All-point defense systems switching to saturation fire. Electronic warfare suite deploying full-spectrum countermeasures. Deploying chaff clouds and sensor ghosts. What follows defies conventional Council military doctrine. Instead of the precise, resource-conserving engagement the alien observers expect, the Nemesis unleashes an overwhelming barrage that appears wasteful and imprecise. Railguns fire not just at Krull ships, but at empty space between them. Nuclear-tipped missiles detonate at seemingly random intervals, creating sensor-blinding electromagnetic pulses. Shirak watches in confusion as Ramirez intentionally targets areas where no ships are present. Your firing solutions are incorrect. You're wasting ammunition on empty space. Ramirez's grin widens. We're not aiming at where they are. We're denying them anywhere to go. This concept, controlling the battle space through overwhelming force rather than precision, leaves the Krull vessels firing at sensor ghosts, while the Nemesis methodically isolates them from each other. They're attempting to regroup, the sensor officer reports. Krull Vessel 2 and 4 are coordinating a pincer movement. Chen nods to Ramirez. Show them why that's a mistake. The lieutenant activates a weapons system that makes the Council observers physically recoil, a specially designed warhead that detonates into thousands of hypervelocity fragments, creating a kinetic barrier no ship can safely traverse. Space minefield deployed, Ramirez reports calmly. The Krull ships, their formation disrupted and communication, jammed by the Nemesis's electronic warfare, can no longer coordinate effectively. The human vessel doesn't fight them simultaneously. It isolates each target, overwhelms its defenses with unpredictable attack patterns, and moves to the next. 43 minutes after engagement began, 3 crawl ships are disabled, their weapons and engines destroyed but life support intentionally preserved. The 4th, recognizing defeat, attempts to retreat. Should we pursue? Ramirez asks. Chen considers for a moment. No. Let it run. I want them to tell others what happened here. As damage control teams secure the research station and medical personnel attend to survivors, Chirac approaches Chen on the bridge. Your tactics violated 17 separate principles of the Council's unified combat doctrine, the Medusan states. And yet, we won, Chen replies. At tremendous expenditure of ammunition and energy, a Council vessel would have achieved the same outcome with 1/3 the resources. Would it? Chen gestures to the intact research station. 4 crawl warships against 1 defender, and we suffered no casualties. The crawl expected us to follow conventional tactics, to target their ships efficiently, to preserve our resources, to fight by the rules of engagement they understand. We didn't, and that's why we won. Later, as the Nemesis sets course back to Earth, the surviving crawl commander transmits a final message to its fleet. The humans don't fight like the Council races. They don't seek efficiency or elegance. They seek to dominate the battle space through controlled chaos. Their vessel doesn't win through superior technology. It wins by changing the rules of engagement. Recommend extreme caution in all future encounters. The Galactic Council chamber gleams with the combined artistry of 17 species, soaring crystal arches, gravity-defying fountains, and holographic displays showing the unified achievements of Council civilization. In this monument to cooperation and enlightenment, Admiral Chen feels distinctly out of place in his utilitarian uniform. The human vessel Nemesis employed tactics that violate 3 separate articles of the Galactic Conventions on Civilized Warfare. Ambassador Torquay of the Telseri Concordat declares, their ceremonial robes shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that signal moral outrage to those who can read Telseri emotional displays. Electromagnetic pulse weapons disrupt civilian communications networks. Radioactive debris clouds persist in the engagement zone. The psychological impact of their shock and awed approach causes unnecessary trauma to sentient beings. The Council representatives murmur in agreement. Only the Praxian delegate remains silent, their faceted eyes studying Chen with unsettling intensity. High Councillor Chen, the ancient Vordani who has led the Council for 3 centuries, raises a withered hand for silence. Admiral Chen, how do you respond to these accusations? Chen steps forward, keenly aware that humanity's relationship with the most powerful political entity in this sector of the galaxy hangs in the balance. Earth needs allies, or at least neutral parties, to survive in a cosmos that now knows of its existence. High Councillor, distinguished representatives, he begins, voice steady, I acknowledge the Nemesis employed weapons and tactics outside standard Council doctrine. However, I reject the characterization of our actions as uncivilized. He activates a small holographic projector that displays Earth history, specifically the Cold War nuclear standoff. For over 50 years, humanity lived knowing our civilization could end within hours. We survived by making warfare too horrific to contemplate. The chamber falls silent as the display shows missile silos, submarines carrying world-ending weapons, and the scared landscapes of test sites. The humans developed planet-killing weapons. As a deterrent, the Jovian ambassador's translator struggles to convey his disbelief. We call it mutually assured destruction, Chen explains. When both sides possess weapons too terrible to use, peace becomes the only logical choice. Ambassador Torquay's bioluminescence shifts to patterns indicating contempt, a barbaric philosophy. Advanced civilizations prevent conflict through cultural enlightenment and ethical evolution, not through equilibrium of terror. Chen's expression hardens. The Crawl didn't attack the Arcturus research station with cultural enlightenment, Ambassador. They attacked with warships. The Nemesis responded proportionally to the threat. By deploying electromagnetic pulse weapons in violation of Section 7.3 of the Non-Disruptive Combat Protocols. Tor Kai counters. By saving everyone on that station. Chen replies. The Nemesis isn't a weapon of barbarism. It's a weapon of deterrence. Its purpose isn't to fight wars efficiently, but to make them unthinkable. High Counselor Jen leans forward, ancient eyes narrowing. Yet you designed your vessel specifically to maximize destructive potential while minimizing vulnerability to conventional countermeasures. How does this promote peace? Chen gestures to the tactical display, showing the Arcturus engagement. We disabled 3 Crawl vessels while preserving their life support systems. We intentionally allowed the 4th to escape. A truly barbaric species would have destroyed them all to eliminate future threats. Then why build such a formidable weapon at all? Asks the Medusan representative. Because the galaxy is not the utopia you pretend it is. Chen answers bluntly. The Crawl attacked Earth without provocation. The Council offered sympathy but no military assistance. Humanity learned we must defend ourselves. The Nemesis exists because we live in a universe where peaceful species are still vulnerable to those who are not. Silence falls over the chamber as representatives process this undiplomatic truth. Many glance uncomfortably at the empty seat belonging to the Crawl hegemony. Technically a council member despite their increasingly aggressive expansion. The council will deliberate on whether sanctions are appropriate for these violations. High Counselor Jen finally announces. Admiral Chen, you are dismissed. As the session adjourns, Chen finds himself approached by the Praxian philosopher who had remained silent throughout the proceedings. Your species evolved differently than ours, the Praxian observes, their multifaceted eyes shifting through spectra invisible to human perception. Most spacefaring races develop technology to rise above their violent instincts. Humans develop technology to express those instincts more effectively, then use the resulting equilibrium of terror to create peace. The Praxian tilts their crystalline head. I'm not sure if that makes your kind brilliant or insane. Chen's response is simple. Why choose? We're both. Later, in his temporary quarters at the Earth Embassy, Chen receives a secure transmission from Martinez back on the Nemesis. How bad is it? She asks, her holographic image flickering slightly from the encrypted transmission. Could be worse, Chen sighs. They're debating sanctions, but several representatives approached me privately after the session. The Praxians and Jovians seem almost impressed. The Medusans are terrified, which might work in our favor. And the Crawl. Their representative didn't attend. Word is they're recalling vessels from several border systems. It seems our message was received. Martinez's smile is satisfied. So the Nemesis is doing exactly what we designed it to do, creating peace through strength. Perhaps, Chen replies, looking out at the artificial splendor of the Council homeworld. But I can't help wondering if there's a middle path between the Council's naive idealism and humanity's paranoid preparedness. If there is, Martinez says, we'll find it. That's what humans do. We adapt. As the transmission ends, Chen notices a message waiting on his secure terminal. It's from High Counselor Jen, marked private and confidential. The message contains just one sentence. Your Nemesis presents a compelling argument for the necessity of weapons one hopes never to use. Tactical displays throughout the Nemesis flash crimson as the Void Collective's machine ships emerge from hyperspace, their obsidian hulls absorbing rather than reflecting sensor pings. The geometrically perfect formation, 12 vessels arranged in a dodecahedron pattern, speaks to an intelligence that values mathematical precision above all else. 3 Council cruisers, each representing the pinnacle of their civilization's technology, already listed in space. Their elegant designs, optimized tactical algorithms, and superior technology had proven no match for the adaptive intelligence controlling the machine fleet. All hands, battle stations. Chen's voice remained steady despite the gravity of the situation. Implementing Chaos Protocol Omega. The Council liaison officers on the bridge exchange confused glances as the Nemesis crew rushes to comply with orders that make no tactical sense to alien military doctrine. Admiral. Protests Xandar, the Medusan tactical liaison. Your vessel is outnumbered 4-1 by entities that have already neutralized our most advanced ships. Council protocol dictates immediate withdrawal and regrouping with reinforcements. Chen doesn't take his eyes off the tactical display. With all due respect, those protocols just got 3 ships destroyed. Lieutenant Ramirez, status of the Electronic Warfare Suite. Ready for full deployment, sir, Ramirez replies, her fingers dancing across interfaces that deliberately require physical interaction rather than the neural links Council ships rely upon. Execute. What follows defies conventional military logic. The Nemesis purposely vents plasma from its starboard thrusters, creating a sensor-blinding cloud that obscures its position. It executes a high maneuver that strains structural integrity to near breaking point, positioning itself behind a field of debris from a destroyed Council vessel. "We're hiding?" asks Xandar incredulously. The collective sensors will penetrate these primitive countermeasures in seconds. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, blood trickling from his nose where a momentary failure of inertial dampeners slammed his face into his console, grins through the pain. "We're not hiding. We're introducing variables." The Nemesis launches what appears to be a standard missile barrage, but instead of targeting the collective vessels, the missiles detonate in seemingly random patterns throughout the battle space, creating electromagnetic interference across all frequencies. "You're destroying your own sensor capabilities," Xandar exclaims. "No," Chen replies calmly, "we're destroying everyone's sensor capabilities. The difference is, we've trained for this. They haven't." As the electromagnetic chaos blankets the engagement zone, the Nemesis switches to pre-programmed firing solutions based not on real-time sensor data, but on predictive algorithms derived from human aerial combat doctrines centuries old. Section Chiefs implement EMCON protocols. Chen orders, shifting to emissions control and passive targeting only. Throughout the ship, officers disconnect from the central tactical network, switching to localized control of weapon systems. Where Council vessels rely on perfectly synchronized operations, the Nemesis deliberately fragments its command structure, creating dozens of semi-autonomous units operating on general directives rather than moment-by-moment instructions. Perfect order is perfectly predictable, Chen explains to the bewildered Council observers. Machine intelligence excels at countering patterns, so we give them none. The Void Collective's hive mind, encountering human unpredictability for the first time, struggles to adapt. Its algorithms search for patterns in what appears to be suicidal behavior as the Nemesis executes maneuvers that push its structural integrity to breaking point, fires weapons in seemingly random sequences, and deliberately rotates through multiple command structures to prevent any single decision-making pattern from emerging. They're attempting to establish a new targeting matrix, Ramirez reports, studying passive sensor readings. 3 of their vessels are creating a triangulation grid. Chen nods. Perfect. Execute Maneuver Delta 7. The Nemesis suddenly cuts all engines, using only maneuvering thrusters to send it tumbling through space like a damaged vessel. As the collective ships adjust their firing solutions for what they compute to be a crippled enemy, the human vessel abruptly restarts its main engines at 120% of rated capacity, closing to point-blank range with the nearest collective ship. At this suicidally close distance, the Nemesis reveals another aspect of human warfare that horrifies the Council observers: specialized weapons designed for close-quarters combat in space. Hypervelocity shotgun-like cannons fire clouds of depleted uranium fragments that tear through adaptive shields calibrated for long-range energy weapons. Collective Vessel 1 is disabled, Ramirez reports with satisfaction. Their shields were tuned for coherent energy weapons, not kinetic buckshot. For 17 minutes, the battle continues, the Nemesis fighting in ways the machine intelligence cannot predict, sometimes charging directly at superior firepower, sometimes feigning retreat, all while varying its attack patterns and weapon selections seemingly at random. When the collective finally withdraws, leaving 4 of their vessels disabled, the Council observers stare at Chen in a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. Your crew deliberately induced system failures to create unpredictable behavior patterns, Sandar observes, watching damage control teams rush to repair systems pushed far beyond safety tolerances. You manually overrode safety protocols and operated your vessel in ways guaranteed to cause structural damage. And we won, Chen replies simply. A junior council officer, watching engineers weld cracked support struts, while standing in vacuum with only emergency hardshells for protection, shakes his head in disbelief. The humans fight like they're already dead, which makes killing them nearly impossible. Later, as the Nemesis limps back to the nearest repair facility, a classified report reaches the Council Military Command. The human vessel Nemesis has demonstrated combat doctrine entirely outside our tactical understanding. While technologically inferior to our vessels, its emphasis on unpredictability, ability to function despite multiple system failures, and crew willingness to endure conditions that would incapacitate our personnel make it uniquely effective against algorithmic opponents. Recommend immediate cross-training of select council officers in human combat philosophy. The Nemesis drifts, main power offline, a third of its hull exposed to vacuum. Emergency lights cast blood-red shadows across corridors filled with smoke and the groans of wounded crew. A surprise Void Collective ambush has left the human battleship on the edge of destruction. In engineering, Chief Martinez works in near darkness, her face illuminated only by emergency chemical lights as she manually vents plasma to prevent a core breach. The temperature has risen to 60 degrees Celsius, past the tolerance threshold for most council species, but merely uncomfortable for humans. Reroute auxiliary power through Junction 7. She orders, voice steady despite the chaos, and someone find me a patch kit for this coolant leak before we all cook. A nearby technician, his arm wrapped in a makeshift pressure bandage, nods and crawls into a maintenance duct, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Council safety regulations would never permit access to such confined spaces during an emergency, but humans operate with different priorities. 3 decks above, in what remains of Medical Bay Alpha, Dr. Kyung performs emergency surgery on a navigation officer by the light of a hand-cranked emergency lamp. Her instruments, sterilized with alcohol when the autoclaves lost power, gleam dully in the flickering light. More gauze, she demands, hands deep in the patient's chest cavity. And tell Rodriguez I need another pint of synthetic blood. This one's going to make it. The medical bay's walls bear scorch marks from exploding conduits. Emergency bulkheads separate this section from the vacuum of space just 3 meters away. In such conditions, Council medical protocols would call for evacuation and suspension of all procedures. Humans simply adapt. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Takeda coordinates the counterattack from auxiliary control, the bridge having been destroyed in the initial assault. His face, streaked with blood from a head wound, appears unnervingly calm as he studies damage reports. Status of primary weapons, he asks. Railguns 1 through 7 destroyed, replies Tactical Officer Ramirez, working with a portable terminal connected directly to the weapons systems by a bundle of fiber optic cables, a manual bypass of the damaged central computer. 8 through 12 operational but limited to manual targeting. Missile tubes at 40% capacity. Takeda nods. And enemy position. 3 collective vessels holding at extreme range. They think we're crippled. Takeda's lips curve into a predatory smile. Good. Let's show them how humans fight when we're cornered. Throughout the shattered vessel, the human response to catastrophic damage defies all Council military expectations. Damage control teams move through decompressed sections with inadequate protective gear, their skin blistering from radiation as they restore critical systems. Engineers bypass safety systems to coax extra power from failing generators. Marines manually target weapons systems that should require AI assistance to function. Council rescue ships approach cautiously, expecting to find a derelict vessel and survivors to evacuate. What they discover instead astonishes them. Human vessel. This is the GCS Harmonious Intervention. The Praxian captain transmits, "We are prepared to evacuate survivors and provide emergency assistance." Takeda's response crackles through static. "Appreciate the offer, Harmonious, but we're still operational. Request fire support instead. Transmitting targeting coordinates now." A stunned silence follows before the Praxian responds. "Human vessel, our sensors indicate catastrophic damage to over 40% of your structure. You have multiple hull breaches and radiation leaks. Your reactor is operating in unstable configuration." "Correct," Takeda replies matter-of-factly. "And we still have teeth. Will you support our attack or not?" As the Council vessels move into support positions, they witness something unprecedented. The crippled human vessel, running on emergency power and manned by a crew that refuses to accept defeat, launches a final coordinated assault. Railguns fire in sequences that make no sense to Council tactical observers, but somehow manage to overwhelm the adaptive shields of the lead collective ship. They're creating harmonic interference patterns in the enemy shields, the Tellarian science officer whispers in awe. The targeting solutions are mathematically chaotic, but functionally precise. Martinez, working with a skeleton crew in engineering, manually modulates the remaining power to the weapon systems, timing power surges to coincide with gaps in enemy defenses. Her hands blister on overheated control surfaces, but she doesn't flinch. "Give me everything for 30 seconds. Takeda orders over the emergency channel. Then prepare for complete shutdown." Throughout the vessel, crew members brace for the final effort. Power surges through systems never designed to handle such loads. Circuit breakers pop and are immediately bypassed. Coolant lines rupture and are manually clamped. The Nemesis's final salvo cripples the lead collective vessel, forcing the others to retreat. As emergency systems finally give way to catastrophic failure, the human crew erupts in ragged cheers despite their injuries and the devastation around them. When Praxian rescue teams finally board the Nemesis, they find humans celebrating their victory amid ship-wide devastation. Medical teams stare in disbelief at crew members who continue performing duties despite injuries that would incapacitate any Council species. "Your vessel is destroyed," the Praxian rescue coordinator tells Takeda, mandibles clicking in what translates as profound confusion. "You've lost." The lieutenant commander's blood-streaked face breaks into a grin. "We're still here, and we still killed the enemy. In human terms, that's an absolute win." Later, as the wounded are evacuated to Council medical ships, a Medusan tactical observer composes a classified report that will shake Council military doctrine to its foundations. The humans possess no concept of acceptable defeat. When faced with certain destruction, they do not surrender. They simply adjust their definition of victory to whatever they can still accomplish with the resources available. This psychological trait, more than any technology, makes them the most formidable species we have encountered. Their vessels are not merely machines but extensions of this indomitable will. We must reconsider all previous assessments of human military capabilities. 6 months later, the refitted Nemesis slides into Earth orbit, its scarred hull plates a testament to survival against impossible odds. New sections gleam alongside battle-damaged original plating deliberately left unrepaired, a visual reminder of what the ship had endured and overcome. Admiral Chen stands on the observation deck of the Galactic Council headquarters, watching representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations as they review holographic displays of the upcoming Joint Defense Initiative. The mood has shifted dramatically since his previous appearance before the Council. The specifications for these hybrid vessels incorporate both Council technology and human design philosophy. Chen explains, indicating the blueprints hovering above the central table. The Praxian energy shield grid protecting a compartmentalized hull structure based on Nemesis design principles. Medusan's sensor arrays coupled with human-styled redundant targeting systems. The Talarian Admiral, once humanity's harshest critic, studies the designs with newfound respect. For 10,000 years, our species has built warships to prevent damage, she admits, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. It never occurred to us to design vessels that could continue fighting after being half destroyed. High Counselor Jen nods slowly, ancient eyes studying Chen rather than the schematics. The Void Collective's attacks have increased. 4 more systems hit in the past month. Our conventional responses have proven inadequate. They adapt too quickly to standard council tactics, adds the Jovian representative. Their algorithmic warfare anticipates our strategic responses with 97% accuracy. Chen suppresses a smile. Because you fight mathematically perfect battles. The collective are machines. They excel at predicting patterns and optimizing countermeasures. Humans learned long ago that perfection becomes predictable, but controlled chaos creates opportunities. After the session concludes, 12 species formally request human military advisors for their defense forces. The Council's Military Doctrine Committee, which had previously dismissed human warfare as primitive and barbaric, now seeks their input on revising combat protocols that had remained unchanged for centuries. As Chen walks the gleaming halls of the Council headquarters, he finds himself joined by Xa Lur, the scientific attaché whose initial report had classified the Nemesis as a strategic threat. Your approach to warfare still disturbs me, Xa Lur admits, sensor appendages twitching. Yet I cannot deny its effectiveness. The psychological impact of the Nemesis' survival has spread throughout Council space. How so? Chen asks. The recording of your Lieutenant Commander Takedo refusing evacuation while coordinating attacks from a half-destroyed vessel has been viewed by billions. Many species previously considered non-martial are volunteering for defense forces. They say, if humans can fight like that, perhaps we can learn. Chen nods thoughtfully. Humans don't have natural advantages like Praxian exoskeletons or Medusan multi-spectrum vision. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us daily. We survived through adaptability and refusal to accept defeat. I still don't understand how your crew continued functioning under conditions that would incapacitate any council species, Xa Lur says. The radiation levels alone in your engineering section exceeded lethal thresholds. Humans have always been willing to sacrifice for something greater than themselves, Chen replies. It's not technology that makes us dangerous. It's our ability to endure what seems unendurable when necessary. On the observation deck of the orbital shipyard, Chen watches alongside representatives of a dozen alien species as the first keel of a new vessel class is laid. The Concordance, first of the hybrid warships incorporating both Council technology and human design philosophy, represents something unprecedented in galactic history. The marriage of advanced technology with the pragmatic brutality of human survival instinct. I still don't understand, Xa Lur admits, watching construction drones swarm around the new vessel's frame. Your approach to warfare seems needlessly traumatic, even for the victors. The psychological burden of fighting as you do, pushing past pain thresholds, operating in lethal environments, continuing despite injuries, must be immense. Chen's response captures the essence of humanity's gift to the stars. The universe doesn't care about elegance or efficiency. It deals in hard survival. Humanity learned long ago that the traumatized survivor still gets to write history. He gestures toward the skeletal framework of the Concordance. The Nemesis isn't just a weapon. It's a philosophy that says no matter how badly you're hurt, how outmatched you seem, or how hopeless the situation becomes, you can still shape the outcome if you simply refuse to accept defeat. Later, in a private reception for the joint design team, Martinez raises a glass in toast. The chief engineer's hands, now bearing synthetic skin grafts from her injuries during the collective battle, glint slightly in the light. To the future, she says, where humanity's nightmares help everyone sleep a little safer. As the celebration continues, a Medusan tactical officer approaches Chen quietly. "We've analyzed the collective's attack patterns following encounters with the Nemesis," she reports. "They've begun avoiding engagements with human vessels entirely, even when our intelligence suggests they hold tactical advantages." Chen raises an eyebrow. "They're afraid." "Not exactly." The Medusan's translated voice contains a note of wonder. "Our cognitive specialists believe they're confused. Their algorithms cannot compute the risk-reward calculations of a species that fights hardest when victory seems impossible. They do not understand why damaged human vessels become more dangerous rather than less." As the reception winds down, Chen stands at a viewport overlooking Earth. Martinez joins him, following his gaze to the distant blue sphere. "Do you think we've changed them more than they've changed us?" she asks. Chen considers the question. Perhaps the greatest weapon humanity brought to the stars wasn't the Nemesis itself, but the idea behind it, that survival doesn't require perfection. It requires perseverance. Below them, on design tables throughout the shipyard, a new generation of vessels takes shape. Not perfect in their design, not optimized for specific missions, but created with the understanding that in an unpredictable universe, the ability to endure damage and adapt to failure might be the greatest strength of all.